outdoor industry, how'd you make that change? Was that fueled by your hobbies that you picked up, or like was it an opportunity thing, or was it something that you were like working towards, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question because it was this perfect storm of all of that all at once. Everything all at once. So I couldn't say it was one thing in particular, but you know, I was in Miami, and the company I was with at the time, it was in the beauty industry. I spent 8 years in the body waxing business.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a whole other podcast. We'll save that one for another day, maybe over a beer. And so I spent 8 years in the body waxing business, but growing this phenomenal brand from 100 locations to over 800 locations when we actually listed on the NASDAQ. I helped take that company public a few years ago, and so we moved to Texas to sort of find the best of the best talent to help us with that business. And then
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that's it. We looked at a lot of states, and I'm so glad we landed in Texas.
It's too much.
Tejas.
That's still two.
Tejas Hunt Club Podcast is the podcast for you and you and you.
What's
and
up, guys?
you.
And welcome to another episode 45 of the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon McDowell, and I get to sit down this week. Well, Meagan and I get to sit down this week. She'll be joining us on this podcast as well, with one of the coolest people I can say that I've met from the outdoor world, for sure. So I met Miss Rebecca Jones on a TWA adult mentored hunt last year. You can see that video on our YouTube channel if you're listening. And if you're on YouTube, you can click on over and check that out. I'll link it also on the YouTube channel. But I met her on this hunt. We had engaged a little bit on social media, as always, most of the guests that we have on the podcast. And she was just a very interesting person from the first time I met her. And I wanted to get her on the podcast, and we finally got to get her on and record an episode. And we get to go over a bunch of different topics that, honestly, I didn't think we were going to be covering in this podcast. But I think it was a pretty cool lesson in learning that, the path to something, the path to hunting, the path to life, I guess, is not one that can be drawn out for everybody. And sometimes, you go in a roundabout way, but you end up where you need to be and where you want to be. So it's a pretty cool episode. We get to cover how she got her start into firearms even before hunting, and some of the hunting trips that she's been on since she started her journey, which you'll learn in this podcast, very surprising, has not been going on for that long. But she has gained a lot of knowledge and a lot of time spent in the field, and it's just an awesome podcast that I think all of y'all are going to enjoy, just like the other episodes. Hopefully so. That's why y'all leave the reviews and everything else. Right, guys? Comments. We'd appreciate it. Share it with a friend, as we always ask. But this episode is going to be pretty cool. It's a little bit different, and she apologizes, but I don't think she needs to. She is not from America. She's from Australia. So a little bit cooler little egg drop there about this podcast. So she is the first international guest that we've had on the podcast. So pretty cool little milestone right there. I mentioned earlier the YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate it if y'all switched over after listening to the podcast and checked out some of our videos. Drop a like, leave a comment, give a little thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you like the content. So we like putting out these videos on the hunting trips that we go on and some of the events that we go to. So we think if you enjoy the podcast so far, go check those out. And for the ones that have, we appreciate it and thank you. We are in the thick of whitetail season right now. A lot of cool bucks that have been hitting the ground all over the great state of Texas and all across the nation as well. Good luck to all the guys that are still out there hunting, and congrats to all the guys that have already gotten their target bucks. And with that, we're going to keep this intro short and sweet this week, and we're going to jump into the podcast with Miss Rebecca Jones, and also joining in as a co-host for the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast, Miss Meagan McDowell. So hope y'all enjoy the podcast, guys. Thanks, as always, for listening, watching, subscribing, following, liking, All of it. Thank you. And we'll catch y'all next week. Peace. So we started from over there from our camera, so I can cut it out. But we'll do a little intro here. Just welcome everybody to the podcast, and then a little introduction, and then we'll, I guess, start out. Like I said in the email and everything, I just kind of want to hear your story because it's very, very interesting. Like even when we met on the TWA on that hunt with when you guided for Ashley, like it was cool meeting you, and I'm like, how did this lady come about? Because you, like I said, you've done some really cool stuff, and I want to hear about it. This is more for me than for the listeners.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. So let me make sure here.
Do all your checklist.
Yep. Got it. It'll be 40. Oof. 45.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode, the 45th episode of the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon McDowell, also joined by
Meagan McDowell.
And today we are sitting down with Miss Rebecca Jones because she is an awesome person. I really got to meet her on a TWA hunt last year and got to take some awesome photos of her and Ashley on that hunt, and hopefully we'll hear about that story here tonight. But I wanted to get her on the podcast and just hear about how her story, her journey has been.
How she ended up at TWA hunt and met you.
Yes, exactly. So, Rebecca, if you want to do like a little intro, tell us about yourself, tell the listeners about yourself, and then kind of just tell us how this came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. I'm very happy to sit around and talk stories, so we can
Awesome.
talk as much story as we're prepared to put up with. But no, it's wonderful to spend the time and talk about a couple of things that I've been able to experience recently. But it's a young journey, guys, to the hunting and conservation space. I mean, I quite literally only started hunting. Can you believe it? It's my third season, but technically that's just 2 years ago that I actually began my hunting journey, and it's been pretty whirlwind.
Yes, yes, it has. Yes, it has. I kind of heard that when we were on the TWA hunt because you yourself went through that program as well. But I guess we'll get to that. Kind of tell us how you grew up and how you got into the outdoors, even if it wasn't just hunting, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So if you can't tell, I am Australian. That accent does come in and out every now and then, although I've been in the US 20 years now. So I'm going to make sure I put that accent on a little bit thicker. But I have been here 20 years. Actually, last month I got over here to the US. But I grew up, in Australia, in country Australia. We spent a lot of time at the beach, which was sort of part of our big outdoors. But my dad worked a ton of jobs. He had 4 kids, and when he had free time, his version of free time with not a lot of money and 4 kids was to find as much free activity as possible. So we would get in the car and we would drive a lot. He'd find a state park, and then we would just wander through the woods. We'd find waterfalls, we'd find critters, we'd find all sorts of different things that we could, because it was just his way of making sure 4 kids sort of were entertained outside, but in a really, honestly, cost-effective way. So I think a very early introduction to accessibility for sure. So, we didn't grow up hunting per se, but we did a lot of fishing. He would sort of put a fishing rod in our hands young and taught us how to fish, and fishing was not a lot of catching, but definitely a lot of baiting. We learned how to put bait on a hook. When we did catch something, he was very, emphatic about making sure we knew how to take the fish off the hook. So definitely, really, really nice like that. And I ended up doing some really phenomenal hikes with my dad. I think if he had the opportunity to get into hunting, he probably would have. But we ended up doing a lot of hikes. We hiked New Zealand together, and then beautiful tracks over in New Zealand. And then he and my sister ended up doing a lot of hiking too. But so fishing and just a lot of time spent outdoors. And, when I ended up in Miami, so 20 years ago, I moved to Florida. I worked in the cruise ship industry for about 10 years. And I ended up in Florida, and the hunting side of things just wasn't even in the forefront. And we can talk a little bit about the journey to firearms, because that's a whole other thing. But it's water sports, it's the water, it's outdoors. And I was a mad keen, I still am, but a mad keen scuba diver, free diving, spearfishing. Those are the sorts of things that I guess one does in Miami for free time. So definitely spent a lot of time doing that. So it really didn't get into this side of Texas until I got to Texas.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I'll say, even like you said, you grew up hiking and stuff in Australia, and the first thing that popped into my mind is like, the dangerous things.
Yes. The similarities between Australia and Texas when it comes to hiking.
Yeah, going on a hike. And because you hear about all the snakes, the spiders, and everything that can get you in Australia, with like 4 kids and being able to like teach y'all like what you need to look for, like that is a whole nother level being in Australia with the critters that y'all have down there. Like, what?
It's funny. I just remember one of my sisters was pretty petrified of all of that, but in comparison to people I meet, here, their level of fear of those types of critters is very different. So it's all relative. Really, it's all relative.
It's a little relative, but man, I guess it's just the videos that they post all the time about all the 10 deadliest things in Australia, on land and in the water. So it's like it's just all over the place.
It is, but I would tell you. So I have a 7-year-old, and she, even now, I guess I have very subconsciously taught her to look for things even here. But when we were kids, we learned that before you put your boots on, you tap them against the wall. Always. You tap them against the wall, because who knows what would fall out. And so she does that now, and I realized that
so cute
when she started tapping boots on a wall that I didn't want her tapping boots on. But but even little things like you always lift the toilet seat up, because it's either going to be a frog or snake or spider.
We don't have that problem.
We don't have that problem. But the checking your shoes thing,
scorpions,
spiders and stuff. You always check your shoes. We got that, but we don't really have to check the toilet that much.
Well, you go, put that on your list for Australia. Sweet little green frogs looking up at you will scare the living daylights out of you.
In the most volatile situations.
Just being vulnerable, just sitting there, and just like something, just like that wasn't supposed to happen. No.
This morning.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh man. So you said you worked in the cruise ship industry. Like how what is that like? I've actually never met anybody that's worked on the cruise ship.
In hospitality.
In hospitality.
Yeah. So it's it's sort of this journey to this, job that I have, today. But I joined the cruise ship. I actually worked on board cruise ships for 2 years. I actually lived on board the cruise ship, and I was the on ship training and development manager. So I sort of looked after all of the training of the crew on board the ship, and they had a crew training center on board. And so I would run everything from English classes all the way through to management classes, leadership programs, and then the job that we had on board was to actually teach all of the safety training as well with the safety officers. So I would run the safety at sea and crisis management classes. Things and the drills, and it was a phenomenal experience. You live with 64 different cultures in very, very confined, closed spaces for 6 months at a time. You learn a lot about people.
I bet.
What motivates them, how they work together, and how you can find commonality in the most interesting of places, even though technically your backgrounds and cultures you might not necessarily spent that time together. And so my employee relations challenges were usually a little bit different than what I see in corporate America now, but it was pretty neat.
Such a unique perspective.
Because I'm interested in it because I've thought now, like, growing up, you go to school, you're supposed to go to college, and you're supposed to get a job, and everything's going to be hunky dory and like just work for the same company,
anyway.
like boom, 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 right?
Yeah,
So when I'm interested in like these jobs that people have and like that, you didn't hear about on career day.
No.
Like nobody told you the path, or you didn't know anybody that got to be like the marketing manager and like different aspects of like companies and being successful. And it's weird, it's funny and interesting to hear how people get into their positions. And what I've noticed, at least from the people I've met that I ask these questions to, it's like no one path or like set way, like there was no way they could have set back and told you, hey, this is the path that you would take to get to this job.
I mean, unless they're like a doctor or a dentist or like anything that's like a solid trade with a defined map. Everything else kind of just becomes like, well, now I know why I had to go through that to make it to the here and the next step, and so
all that kind of stuff. So that's really interesting.
It really is, and it's a big wide world. And all I knew is that I wanted to travel, and traveling would be a heck of a lot easier if I was also working and paying for it, because I was the one that was going to have to pay for it to get there, or to keep going. So just to be able to find these opportunities that let me actually work and travel. And so I saw a lot of the Caribbean and the Bahamas over those 2 years. A lot. But then when I left ships, I actually moved to Miami and spent another 8 years in the cruise ship business, but it was with a company that put retail stores on cruise ships. So I spent the next 8 years traveling all over the world with the 100 different ships that we were working on, and taught people to, it was retail at sea. So I was teaching people how to sell, how to provide customer service, how to build relationships, how to just deliver the sort of an experience, and then how to grow in your career in a very unique and unusual environment. You sort of don't think, oh, I'm going to go to sea to forge a career, but we were able to show people that there are other pathways, and just like what you just said, there's very non-traditional ways to grow and have a really unique career that matches with what you want to do, your values, your morals, and not in a traditional way. So that was pretty neat to do that. So I spent a lot of time traveling.
So in alignment with what we're really, our biggest mission, like what we've been working toward, is having our experiences and what we want to go do and travel and hunt and fish and all the experiences that we want to go have. Normally you'd work 9 to 5 to pay for all of your experiences. We're trying to bridge the gap between the two, right? Where, it's more of a lifestyle / career. You're enjoying more of that time. And I think that's great. That's definitely the mindset we have.
I love that. And it's not impossible to do that at all. I mean, you just have to really be sort of sure of what it is, what's important, what you want to do, and build the connections, build the relationships, put yourself out there, right? So
it's definitely about the people, for sure. It's not how much you know, it's just how many people you know, and being a good asset and a good friend, and
and
most
having
definitely
having the skills with it too, and like you said, like being able to like teach people for one, and like come up with all those things, because as you say, like that's not a job that's very common. So I'm sure there wasn't like a book of how to teach and manage all of these people on a cruise ship. It's just kind of like, we're gonna figure it out as we go.
Figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. What are we trying to accomplish here in totality, and let's problem solve for that. I mean, that's really what it was. But I'll tell you, I mean, how that's then helped later in career and growing. I mean, I'm an executive level position and I've held that role in a couple of really big, multi-billion-dollar companies. And what you learn just by spending that time with so many different people from different parts of the world with all of their own stuff, how that teaches you to really navigate, other situations that pop up. So it's been the tough conversations. I mean, I've had some tough conversations. So it's an interesting way to build which is what I have. I mean, essentially I run human resources for organizations, but probably a little bit more strategic, in terms of how people fit into the the business plan of a company, but it's been really a really great journey through all of these just unusual and different types of industries and jobs that I've taken along the way. So it's been fun.
Yeah. So with all that, it's you said you hadn't started like hunting, but you are like in the sense a hunter. Like you deal with different kinds of people. You wanted to travel and doing different things and like all these different cultures and how like hunting crosses all of those different cultures. Like it's a main thing. So that's pretty cool. So like you said you're in the outdoor industry. How'd you make that change? Was that fueled by your hobbies that you picked up, or like was it an opportunity thing, or was it something that you were like working towards, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question because it was this perfect storm of all of that all at once. Everything all at once. So I couldn't say it was one thing in particular, but you know, I was in Miami, and the company I was with at the time, it was in the beauty industry. I spent 8 years in the body waxing business.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a whole other podcast. We'll save that one for another day, maybe over a beer. And so I spent 8 years in the body waxing business, but growing this phenomenal brand from 100 locations to over 800 locations when we actually listed on the NASDAQ. I helped take that company public a few years ago, and so we've moved to Texas to sort of find the best of the best talent to help us with that business. And then
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that's it. We looked at a lot of states, and I'm so glad we landed on Texas. But after a sort of a great run and success at that company, I had an opportunity to join Orvis, and Orvis is an outdoor lifestyle company that's got this core of this heritage of wing shooting and fly fishing.
Yep.
And I will tell you, when I first got the call, I mean, the fishing side of it made a ton of sense. I'd grown up fishing, but the part that really sort of gave me pause was the wing shooting. And I was sort of, I was ready for a change because it'd been a pretty stressful time, the years prior with the other company. But I was sort of looking for a change. The outdoor industry was very exciting, but I was pausing because it's like, well, wing shooting, and that means that there's tons.
Yeah.
To say that out loud in front of people. And so I had this pent up sort of, people might disagrry with me in Australia, but all this sort of propaganda, it turns out that it's sort of been fed to me over the years in terms of firearms. And I just had, and I, talked to a couple of other people about this. I just had this huge fear of guns for a couple of different reasons. Nothing that was about safety, just what I'd been told for years that they were bad and hunting was bad. And sort of, you hear that for 20 years, you sort of stop asking the inquiring questions. You just start to believe what you're being told.
Exactly.
And so the opportunity to join a company where they sell guns, right? And Orvis sells guns, and then you hunt birds. And so it forced me to sort of look at the industry. It forced me to ask a couple of different questions to start talking to people, and especially that team there. And being in Texas made it a little easier because I didn't have to turn around far to find somebody who was very happy to give me an opinion with some facts. And I realized it was so much more. The whole concept on habitat and environment and conservation and food, and it just all started coming out. And I'm like, oh, this could be really interesting. And so it was enough for me to say, okay, I can work for a company. There's an alignment around how we will teach people, either to do this or to open their mind to it, or just there was a value alignment that made sense, even though I wasn't necessarily a hunter at the time. And my very first weekend, I had an opportunity to take a shotgun lesson. My first weekend, it was part of my onboarding. I mean, imagine that. Welcome to the company. Here's a shotgun. Go for it. But I had this lesson with this incredible woman up in New York, and it just, she told me a few things, made sure I actually had a gun that fit me, which is amazing. Just the very first time you do something, you actually have equipment
for a shotgun.
right?
Experience.
Yeah, because I'm 5 foot, most firearms, anything that I'm going to pick up is usually not going to fit me. And so it was just really important that they wanted my experience to be a good experience. And so, the clay goes up and I shoot the clay. I mean, that's it. I'm done. I'm hooked. That was the turning point. That was the turning point. And it wasn't so much about hunting. It was just, okay, I'm not scared anymore. I'm not scared. I get it. I can focus on safety. I can do all of these things, but I'm not scared. And then we the company just had just such an incredible approach to education. And that is my background, right? My background is education. And so that was the alignment. Okay, well, if I can get into this and figure out a way that makes me feel comfortable sort of on this journey to the big parts of conservation and food chain and all of that, if we can do it through really great education, I'm in. And so then that just sort of it just spiraled. It just spiraled quickly. I'm like,
that's usually how it goes. Like I honestly say, if there's a person that doesn't like guns, or like you said, have been taught or told things that aren't necessarily true, if they go and experience it with a person that knows how to take the person for a first time, and gauge that experience, and to know how far to take them. Like, you hear stories of so many times of, even people being introduced by their family members, and of course it's like, here you go, take this gun, like, hold it up,
here's grandpa's
gun,
heavy,
like, and it's too big, and it ruins it. I wouldn't say it ruins people, but it gives them a perception of like, this is something I'm not too sure about. But like you said, for you, people educating you and setting people up for success rather than leaving stuff open for failure. And I feel like if more people had that experience, that are on the other side of being okay with guns and things, and hunting in general, it would be a different story.
Well, and I'm sure you being on the receiving end of that made you feel better about being part of that brand on the other end, right? So, I mean, that's an amazing representation of like, okay, now I can buy into this. Like,
yes,
it was great.
Absolutely. And I bought into the business and all of that side of it. But, I knew that I was going to have to hire and engage and develop people in the organization that might be really phenomenally talented people, but might be getting stuck on this point too. And so, so it was really important to again, there was no requirement of me to do it, but I felt like it was just easier if I could sort of connect the dots. And then just having a background with people and culture. I mean, my job's always been about retention. It's always been about education. It's always been about mentorship, leadership, performance management. I mean, that's my day job. But to sort of apply those types of principles, I'm thinking, well, how can I take what I do in my day to day and apply it to learning how to do this? Because I would sort of hear people talking about, well, I went and did this incredible hunt and I have all of this meat in my freezer, or I went and I shot, a round of clays and I was in this competition, or I shot a mile. I'm like, whoa, that's real. Okay, where do I go next? What do I do next? What do I do? And so it was funny. I mean, the crazy thing as to how I ended up finding TWA, because TWA was a really, really big step in the journey. Orvis was very good for the wing shooting side, but I really sort of wanted to, I'd sort of exhausted a lot of the education programs that Orvis had for wing shooting. And I was really looking at bigger game and rifle craft. And I was just Googling like hunting shirt. Every good story starts with a good
Google
piece
search.
Of fashion, right? Like I was looking for something fashionable, so I wanted to really, I was looking for a good shirt, and I Googled, hunting shirt, and I came across McKenna Quinn, so Amber Hayes, and beautiful clothes. I'm like, oh, these are great, and then you start clicking on things, and I think I'd saw it on her Instagram page, but it just led me to a bunch of events and things, and then all of a sudden I end up on the TWA women women in the fields program. They had an event for dove hunting, and then they had the connection into adult learn to hunt. And so I just sort of signed up for everything. I mean, at this point, I'm just signing up for everything. So,
That's awesome.
That's why it's there. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, it was like being able to come to Texas and being able to have all those different programs and all the different opportunities.
It's super unique.
I did a podcast with Taylor Weems. He's Through the Gray on Instagram. We let it went out this morning.
Oh, good.
So, and we were talking about how, in Texas, there's so much opportunity on private land. Like a lot of people, complain that there's, no public land in Texas. It's not like out west in like Wyoming and Montana and everything, but there's so much opportunity on private land. And I mean, yes, you kind of have to pay for it or, but like there are ways to get, to go on hunts and programs that are there that can lead you to different avenues to have more access. It's not just like it's a little bit harder. You got to find your way.
We were just having a conversation about this last night, with our own access, like as adults. I mean, we mentor a lot of hunts, and I have the most fun. I've always said this when I'm mentoring. Like, I honestly have more fun mentoring than I do on my own hunt sometimes. And so that program in itself and the fact that they do work so hard to partner with private landowners is the most important piece of the entire program is the access, right?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing for most people to have is the access to that land. And
oh my gosh, absolutely.
There is public land and you can hunt on it.
Yep.
But it's,
you got some skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Patience. There's money that goes into that too. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you have to work for, but yeah, that program is so cool.
Well, that's exactly it. And I think, that parallel, that the concept of mentorship and, as an adult, it's really hard to start. I mean, gosh, you move to a new town, it's hard to meet friends. I mean, let alone get into, all of these. It's hard to do a lot of stuff as an adult and do it in a way that is really accessible. And that to me was just so important, and what I appreciated so much about the programs and super unique to Texas. And so the key thing is you just have to be curious. If you're curious and you just kind of keep clicking the buttons and reaching out to people and sort of saying what's up with this? What does this mean? What are you doing? How can I learn more? I mean, that type of curiosity is what does that. And so, I mean, I did that in Texas, and then I just sort of started looking to see what was in other states as well. And I've done all sorts of interesting things with different programs and organizations in Colorado and Montana and Minnesota, just Georgia. It's just sort of, you meet people and just sort of find these opportunities. And it's just amazing to me, the greatest, there's absolutely a need for guides and outfitters. And there's a for-profit side of things. Absolutely. I mean, people need to be able to make a living in all of that, and I will happily support a guide, and I put a lot of money wherever I can into local economy to support that. But I think something that was really wonderful in my journey too is just the kindness of people to say, hey, I'm going to go and do this. Do you want to come? And that's been a really, really big part of it, is that people that sort of those invitations to say, well, you just want to come and walk. And so one of my colleagues actually took me on my first turkey hunt a couple of years ago, and I didn't hunt, I didn't carry a gun, I didn't have a license. It was just getting up at 4:30 in the morning in upstate New York, and looking for a turkey, and then just watching the world wake up, and those types of just invitations where I would always just say yes, thank you, yes, and that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to do a lot more of now. I mean, I learned a lot of things quite rapidly. I practice a lot of these things rapidly. And so to be able to now start to invite people along with me is really cool, even in a short period of time.
So I know you said you were real interested after the first time when you shot a firearm, but was there ever like a line where you were like okay with firearms, but you were still kind of like, I don't know if I want to shoot an animal?
Yeah. It's a really good question, because I don't think I was never, because I grew up on a hobby farm in Australia. My parent, we had a couple of acres, and from a young kid, we would have our own cattle and sheep and chickens. And so this idea of I can't necessarily say that I had this. I was not concerned about, killing an animal for consumption. That was something that I certainly had, but it was just whether or not I could do it in a really oops, hang on, sorry, something's popped up here. It's something just wanting where that decision point where, am I going to be the person that then pulls the trigger? That was sort of the big difference there. And it really came, I think, a little bit just more, the more classes I did, the more time I spent talking to people about their experiences and just being invited along. It's not like I the very, very first time I, shot a bird or a deer or something was like the first time I was witness to it. I was part of somebody else's story and got to see it happen. And I think that just made it a lot easier to move on over into it. But then, to me though, what was really, really important is thinking about the type of hunter and the type of hunting that I did want to do, because hunting actually comes in a variety of different forms, which is the truth. I mean, you've got pest control hunting for the avid shooter, or you've got really sort of sustenance hunting, which is because you are really looking to put meat in your freezer. And so, I mean, people have very different opinions and thoughts on both, but they exist and there's space for them. And so, so if I was going to shoot an animal, I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to consume it, and do those things. And that's what I loved about what the TWA, the Adult Learn to Hunt program is that you got to experience all the parts. I mean, I think you should have, your expectation shouldn't be you go into something, do everything once, and then you're good for life. I mean, wouldn't that be easy? But it was really great to be able to go in and just experience all of the elements, and then find those opportunities to go and practice. I mean, I love pig hunting, because it's getting rid of the pests. I mean, that it's actually a really, really big problem, and pig hunting is a form of pest control, right? Yep. But it also then allows me to practice my butchery skills, and it allows me to sort of practice these different types of processing and cleaning that makes sure that I'm better than for the animal that I actually want to keep more of.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
So
I feel for the guys in the Midwest, and I know they don't want pigs up there. I get it. Like, I wouldn't want them up there either. But to think that you go, because shooting at a target with a bow or even with a rifle is one thing, but when you're have an animal in your sights, it kind of changes sometimes. And for some people, and the fact that they may get one tag a year and don't get to practice and like don't get to get those reps actually taking an animal, like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't like that at all. Like, the fact that we get to practice and do those reps and get it over and over again to get better, to be more ethical, to make better shots. It's a privilege and pretty cool.
I've never looked at it that way. It's a privilege,
because like some guys just get one tag and that's it. And they've made one shot on an animal. The last time was last year.
Yeah. No kidding, right? No kidding. And so that's it. And there's space for this here, because then that's the whole other side of it, which is truly about habitat practices, and then making sure that you're creating great environment for other animals and non-introduced species to be able to thrive. And so, the whole thing is just this really intricate balance. And hunting is this huge, plays this huge part in it. This huge part of it. So, for me, I very much, I'm all about the conservation side of it. And I like that. For me, a lot of it's the outcome. I focus probably more so on the participation side. And I think the more people that we have, if I could sort of say where I would want to make the most impact, it's about getting more people involved. How do we get more people in the space, learning about what it is, participating? Because you can be a conservationist, but often the missing gap is the role that you play. Sort of, you're either an observer or you're a participant, and both are good.
Yeah.
But I always want to be a participant, and hunting's a great way to be an active participant in the art. I mean, what conservation is. So
Exactly.
That's so well said.
Yeah.
So well said.
And it's for people too, and you try to get people those opportunities to see it. And even if they don't become a lifelong hunter, they might not ever do it again. They might not say, hey, this is
Not for me. Yeah.
But I understand it now,
And they respect it.
and they respect it. It's then somebody that we still kind of have on our side that still looks at things, from a educated perspective, or at least
that's
the curiosity to get the education and whatever's
again, curiosity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it is that curiosity. And there's so many wonderful organizations out there that are doing really great things that support conservation or habitat practices. And we've talked about a couple of them, but the way they get money is through membership. And so even if you're not going to be out there and be a lifelong hunter, but you're still curious, you can still join these types of organizations and access the content and the resources and the people and the conversations and sort of fuel that pipeline for you to be an observer of conservation if that's what it is that you want. So
I've been a member of the Sheep Foundation for 4 years now.
All those sheep that you're out there getting.
I'll probably never get to hunt a sheep in my life.
Right.
So
Audad is as close as it's going to get.
Most likely. So unless I, one day just win a raffle or something, that's the only way. But I am a member of the Sheep Foundation. So
we were members of the Turkey Foundation too before we even had ever turkey hunting.
Yeah. And that's important. Like, that's such an important thing to, oh my gosh, it's such an important thing. And people don't necessarily think about that, that you can be part of all of these organizations because it's education you're learning, it's access, it's participation and all of these things. And you're creating it's fundraising for these organizations to be able to do the work, to execute the science, to get it all going. So that's exciting.
Publications too.
Yeah, great magazines, content. I mean, if you could take a snapshot of our coffee table, it's all of them, from Texas Trophy Hunters to SEI, like all of them. They're all there.
Yes, exactly right.
And that's what we try to tell. Speaking like access, I mean, those organizations, yes, you're paying for a membership, but that also gets you into some pretty cool events, like we talked about with TWA and the adult Learn to Hunt program, but going to SEI and going to Dallas Safari Club, Houston Safari Club, like you get to meet guides and outfitters, you get to meet people that the clothes, the gear you're going to use, the clothes you're going to wear, like all of that stuff is there, the optics, guns, bows, everything. And
usually get a discount, like you said, on most of those brands.
Most of those stuff.
And that's exactly it. And that's, I think, a really, really big thing for people who are sort of even just trying to get into the space. And the barrier is cost. I mean, cost to entry can be a really big barrier. And I think the message is that there's so many great organizations that help with access by trying to reduce those types of participation barriers. And, I learned how to wild bird hunt up in Montana with an awesome organization called Her Upland that teaches women how to go and hunt public land, with their own dog. And it's a phenomenal org, so much so that I sit on their board now because I just believe in what it is that they're doing. But part of their mission is to make their camps and their classes as affordable as possible. They keep the price points low. And then they offer scholarships for people who might otherwise not be able to afford it. And that's wonderful. They do it, but not necessarily unique to them. There's a lot of organizations that do that because the only way we'll have more opportunities and we'll have more land and we'll have sort of more experience is if more people participate in a really smart and engaging way. So, for people who run into those barriers, it's sort of finding people like you guys and myself or others, even within, the TWA program, and saying, hey, I want to do this. How can I? Where should I be looking? Where should I find out information?
And that's the biggest point, is it's the exposure of those opportunities also. right? So like you said, what did you do? You Googled one thing and then you were on the web and you were browsing and it was on social media. So like a lot of people can discount having this. And I appreciate the shout out for our platform as well, because that's one of the biggest things that we have as a mission is to provide that, right? And I mean, it just speaks to the importance of not just having those organizations, but having someone who's willing to expand that reach of the information, of the opportunities on a variety of platforms, whether that be podcasts or social media, of the top two, you know, what we, our realm.
Yeah.
But storytelling in general is so important. And so, I mean, like that's just a common theme that I think you've seen some of the best opportunities taken advantage of, like things that been exposed, you know, well enough.
Exactly.
No, that's exactly right. And then as you become sort of more proficient with your skills, and then you start thinking about, well, what else do I want to do, and why do I want to do that, and what's important, and then you end up in places like the Northern Territory, Australia, hunting bantang, like which is what I did 2 months ago. You know, you sort of, because again, you're learning all of these things, and you keep wanting to learn more, and these opportunities come along, and you just got to lean into the yes
all the time. Say yes to everything. And but it's funny because when we met at the TWA hunt, like kind of talked a little bit about like how you had just started hunting, and then like I think it was last spring you went on a bison hunt.
Oh yeah, I see him back there.
That's my guy. He's back there. He's on the floor.
And then after like our conversations and stuff, and I saw that you went on that hunt, I was like, oh yeah,
she's serious.
She's serious about this, because you know most people go whitetail, maybe a mule deer, elk hunt, you know, an axis, being in Texas, you know, but straight to the bison. So like how did that come about?
Well, I really wanted a lot of meat in the freezer.
To say the least.
Yes.
I was sort of thinking, if I'm going to go big or go home. No, I which was actually kind of seriously quite part of it. I was at a she hunts camp. So Brittany Boddington, who's a wonderful woman, her and her partner, her husband, I should say, Brad, and her had, you know, Craig. There's an incredible program that they have, which introduces women. It's a program that focuses on getting women out there. But they had this great camp, and I'll be crystal clear, fully transparent. It was a high fenced operation, and so, you know, I got to choose what it was that I wanted to hunt. And so as I'm sort of looking, I wanted a big challenge. I wanted to sort of understand being able to use sort of different calibers that I might not necessarily use sort of for whitetail, much bigger caliber. And it really was about, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure that I've got it produces meat. And so for me, it really was about, if I was going to do the hunt, I needed it to be the best learning opportunity that it could be, and that you know, I would end up with 400 pounds of meat, and I had to go on
my goodness.
Yeah, I really underestimated how much meat. So if you're on an adult learn to hunt program last year and you had bison, that was my bison. A lot of meat.
Exactly. And honestly, like, you know, we've both hunted high fences, like I've filmed in them, everything. And it's like, for some people, and the people that are like, you know, look down their nose at it, I'm like, I invite you to try it if you think it is as easy as you think it is. And that's where I'll usually leave the conversation.
There's just no point in even like going further than that.
Exactly. That's my take on it for everyone.
Yes.
Try.
We've been at ranches where they have elk, and we've never seen one.
Never seen them.
Like, we've been trying to film content for a certain ranch, and we have yet to have an elk walk out in front of us to film it. I mean, it's not what you think it is.
Exactly.
That's exactly it. It's like, be curious before you have an opinion, but then be curious to figure out if that's the opinion you're going to keep.
Exactly. So you said you wanted to try different calibers, obviously for a bison. What caliber did you use on that hunt?
Well, I mean, I was probably a little undergunned. I used the 300 Weatherby on that, which, you know, I mean, I fortunately had done a lot of spent a lot of time practicing, and so I actually had really, really good shot placement. So any caliber with good shot placement will probably do well.
Exactly.
But so it was certainly probably the lowest caliber that you'd want on a big game like that. But great shot placement, and it went down right where he stood.
Oh, how exciting is that?
But it was cool. And people say, "Whoa, that's big. How was the recoil?" I'm like, I have no idea. The adrenaline was like like a tickle.
Anything.
It was a tickle. Yeah, tickle. Which is the same with the Bantang in Australia. I mean, I shot a 375 H&H, and it was the first time I had ever shot that, and I'm kind of in a lot of ways glad, because I probably would have been nervous about the recoil on it if I'd spent a lot of time, practicing with it. I clearly practiced the shooting, but yeah, same thing. I can't even remember the feeling of that.
The feeling, I mean, that's usually how it is. I mean, unless it's just a gun that's way bigger. You don't have good placement, on your shoulder. Then usually you're focused in on making a good shot on that animal. You said going back to like Australia and hunting the Bantang, like, and of course that was with Blood Origins and Robbie. So another great organization that we both follow along with and are members of. It was funny. Megan and I were watching their film Lionheart that they just put out on YouTube. And
so good.
Because I'm a contributor of Blood Origins, so I looked at Megan and I was like, I paid for this film.
Yeah, okay.
I love that.
Just as a joke, I helped pay for this film. But so like another great organization that does awesome things. Like I said, followed Robbie for a long time. But what was the feeling like having an opportunity to go back and hunt in Australia, where you're from? Because you had these experiences in America, but did you ever, like, once you started hunting, did you ever think about it? Like that would be an opportunity for you to go do, or like got added to the list or anything?
Yeah, I couldn't have even imagined that it would be something. And then as it turns out, because there's such an opportunity in Australia to be talking a lot more about what's going on over there. And there's a lot of stuff happening where hunting rights are really kind of under attack there. And a lot of it is just because it's sort of just not talked about. And I think what's really important for hunting in Australia and firearm ownership in Australia is there just has to be more open conversations. So I didn't even really understand the extent of what hunting was available in Australia until I started asking questions and sort of looking at it. And so, when Robbie said that he was filming this documentary there, and I was going to be in Australia around the same time, and so the opportunity to I'm coming. I'll be there too. And to be able to do that, and it was a film on hunting heritage and filming with the indigenous, the traditional landowners up in the Northern Territory, and understand how important hunting was to them and their culture. The Bantang are technically considered an invasive species in Australia. And the opinion on invasive species in Australia by the government is eradication. I mean, eradication is sort of how they focus on that, and that's not necessarily the solution at all. Because then it means that the whole hunting community environment and what that can do. And so anyway, there's a ton of stuff in there that I have very, very strong opinions about. But what was really, really great was to be there and part of this film that showcased that even an invasive species like Bantang, which has only been in Australia for, less than 200 years, is already a really important part of the traditional landowners' way of life. And so they're not looking at it in terms of eradication. They're looking at it in terms of how does this help support how we live on the land and how we create, economic security as well. With hunters coming in and really smart hunters. And so Nick Joyce, who's the concessionaire there, there's only one. It's 1.1 million acres, and he's the only guy running the operation on 1.1 million acres. It's crazy, but he's managing the land. He's working with them to manage the land. He's working with them to make sure that there's really, really great practices put in place. And that was exciting. It was great to be there, to be on home soil, to do that. but to really sort of understand the story that we were telling, which just needs to be so much louder, there and anywhere. It's really important storytelling. But then I found, it turns out there was a shotgun club about 15 minutes from my house there in Queensland that had been there 40 years, never heard of it before. Did a little searching, and sure enough, I mean, last time I was home, I joined the shooting club in Australia. So I'm now a member of a shotgun club in Australia. Never in a million years would I thought that. And I'm going back next month, and hopefully they'll let me sign up for the tournament.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's real cool. And I think it's real important, like you said, to tell those stories, also for the people that are involved in Australia, but also for people in America to see as well. Because not only to help those people, but to realize it's not far from like being taken away from you. Right. And I think a lot of people here like take it for granted that it's just going to be here and we're going to get to do these things, but it's a very short time period and a very few moves that can be made to where it's not going to be like that.
I think that's why we love blood oranges. I do love blood oranges.
I love blood oranges too. But
part of the reason why we love Blood Origins is because that's their mission.
Yep.
Is to tell those stories and to push the boundaries. And I mean, they've come under heat for it. And it's not an easy job. They do a great job at it.
Yeah.
They find the right people.
Yeah.
I'm sure the investment, even before they get to publish it, is years and years and years in the making.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's such a void that they're filling. And it's very clear. That's what their mission is.
Yeah, it's huge, and they're just it's such a small team, right?
It is. Yes. And they can't be everywhere.
You guys get it. It's a small team, but what Robbie's able to do and the impacts he's making, and you guys said it. I mean, that's the big thing, and I appreciate it anytime when Robbie shows stories coming out of Australia or what's going on in Africa, and he's got so much incredible work about the very sensitive, very emotional stories about elephants. And so there's so much. You can have an opinion, of course. Everyone's got one, right? But get the education, look at the facts, sort of be curious. But it is so important because I know with what's coming up in November, we have a lot of things that we get to have a say in. I am an American. I sound like I'm Australian, but I've been an American for a few years. And that ability and that right that we have to vote and to make sure that our rights as hunters and as conservationists are being protected. We can't just stand on the sidelines for that. So it's very, very important to be registered, to understand what's on the ballots, and not just in your own state. I mean, obviously you've got anything that's federal or in your own state you should be part of, but understand what's going on in other states. I mean, you have to be knowledgeable about what's happening so that when it's coming for you in your state, you see it. There's an awareness of what's happening. So that's huge. That's really huge.
You have the support of other states too. I mean, because if we're not there for Colorado, if we're not there for anybody else,
Florida,
it has been quoted many, many times. I forgive me for not.
You'll misquote it because I will too.
Exact person, but it was a person that is on the board of one of these animal rights organizations, and their mission is literally to take it state by state because they know they can't do it at the federal level. They've started in California with all the things that they've done there. They've worked up their way up the West Coast, and they're just coming back east and just trying different things. But it's important. I know you also to be involved in these organizations, but like you said, you're on different boards of organizations as well. It's also takes people to be leaders in those organizations, and I'm not saying anything bad, but a lot of the leaders in these organizations are older, so we have to have people our age or older than us to fill in these positions, and if you're not a part of these organizations, you can't be in those positions.
Not even just in the organizations, even in legislation. I mean, higher than that, and they need to be educated too. And that needs to be something that's a mission behind a lot of these nonprofits is being part of that lawmaking level.
Yeah.
We can go down a whole other podcast, like you said, about this topic. But
sure.
And it's like,
no, for sure. Oh, yeah.
For those people that, people obviously have 9-to-5s, you have jobs and stuff, but that's why it's important to just be members. And for people
Mm-hmm.
that do have more time on their hands to
Support
take on
that.
those roles.
Right.
Yeah. 100%. And so that's exactly it. Being a member is step one. Looking for mentorship opportunities, jump on all of that. Finding leadership opportunities. I mean, you got to be in it. You have to participate in order to really be able to influence in these areas. And it's okay if you don't want to, but if you do, you need to sign up. You need to get involved.
The opportunity is there.
Yeah, it is
always
there.
Always.
It is there. And I mean, you've got to be thinking. I mean, again, like I said earlier, I have a 7-year-old, and so I want her to have the ability to at least know that she can do all of these things that Mama's teaching her to do in the future. And so that generational education that needs to take place, just to make sure, again, that it's not just observation but participation, I think is just going to be so important. So man, we have lots of things we can do, lots of things we can get involved in. So if anyone is ever curious about what they can do, come to the website, right? Come to the
exactly
website and find out more, because there's just so many ways to get involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what is on the docket for the rest of your, I mean, we're in hunting season. What do you have coming up next?
Oh my goodness. I have a little bird dog that's she's away at training camp at the moment. I get my English Cocker Spaniel back in a few weeks. And so
awesome.
So pretty.
She's the prettiest dog.
That's what Brandon has.
Yeah.
My buddy Brandon has an English Cocker and Quinn, and she's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, so exciting. So we have a lot of woods that we're going to walk. We're going to we're going to travel around Texas for a little bit. I'm going to take her out to West Texas and do a little bit of quail, and then I don't know if she's going to participate in sort of the sandhill. She's coming with me everywhere anyway.
Oh yeah, she'll try. She'll try. Put some goggles on her. She'll be fine.
Yeah, she'll be fine. I mean, she did come on my turkey hunt earlier this year. I mean, she stayed in her crate in the tent while I was on my turkey hunt, but she was there.
That's cool.
But yeah, so it'll be a good bird season for sure. Lots of exciting things with birds, and then I'll be, talk to Matt. We've got to get a few dates sorted out. I'll be hopefully at a couple of the adult Learn to Hunt program weekends. So helping out there, and then I've got an Aoudad hunt coming up in February,
awesome.
which I am very much looking forward to out west. Bear, going to Montana for bear in May. Next year.
That is one of my top animals for sure. Like
all of them. He wants to go to all the places that have bears. Yeah.
So that too, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of other things that pop up along the way, but mostly it's just that I just want to get out there. I just want to be out there in the field, and I want to continue to meet these incredible people like yourselves that I get to meet along the way. But that's it. I think it's going to be a really great season.
Well, awesome. I'm excited to follow along and see everything, of course. And, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast tonight. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, I really was interested in how, your journey has come. And I'm like even more interested now to see how far it goes, because I feel like it's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
There'll be some fun stuff coming. Hopefully some impactful stuff too. We're working on a few things.
Exactly. And that's another reason why, we get along so well too, because we both have, passion for hunting and passion for keep that passion going on for other people. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate seeing you both, and look forward to seeing you in the field soon.
Sounds good. Ma'am. Sounds good. Well, guys, thank y'all for listening to the podcast tonight, and we'll catch y'all next week. Peace.
Bye.